Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Nicholas Johnston. I'm the publisher of Axios. Thank you so much for joining us at the Lighthouse all week. We're so grateful for all of you for attending. We're also super grateful for all of our partners here at Davos. Nothing we do at Axios would be possible without the support of our partners, and so huge thanks to Lightspeed Venture Partners for making this entire week of tremendous conversations possible. And so I'm happy to welcome from a view from the top conversation, the CEO and co-founder of BetterUp, Alexei Robichaux. Alexei, hello, how are you? Welcome to the Lighthouse. Hottest, buzziest topic at Davos last 2 years is AI, but the sleeper topic, I think, is mental health. And so I think we have an opportunity to kind of bring these two streams together in a really interesting way. Burnout, huge issue in the healthcare industry. So let's talk a little bit about, from your vantage point at BetterUp, where AI and mental health come together to start to solve
Great.
problems.
Happy to be here. Thank you for the opportunity. So some of the data, I'll share some context. We work very closely with Stanford University to track workers' attitudes towards generative AI vis-a-vis their specific jobs. We're able to look at this data by job type, by industry. And we also track across our platform worker well-being by job and industry. So the good news is the most miserable people are lawyers still. So for this audience, you don't have to worry. But healthcare workers are not far behind. And so healthcare workers on average are more stressed, they're more anxious, they're more prone to burnout than the average, let's say, industrialized country worker across, our data sets mainly across the US and Europe. And specific, what we see is that there's two mindsets when it comes to the adoption of AI. We call these mindsets passengers and pilots. And healthcare workers actually there mirror the general population, which is about a third of any organization is a pilot, which means they are optimistic about AI. They have 2 to 4 times heavier usage of generative AI, and they tend to be more top performing based on that organization's outcomes and metrics than what we call passengers, which is 2/3 of an organization. They're hesitant about AI, often scared about AI. They also are more disengaged, and they tend to be more stressed. And so we find that AI has this amplifying or exasperating effect based on a worker's kind of default mindset.
I want to get into deeper on passengers, but first I got to ask, who are the happiest professionals?
The happiest professionals, I am trying to remember off the top of my head. The happiest, I think it was creatives.
Of course.
Yeah.
You know, artists. All right, well, let's get back to the sad folks. For those folks who are passengers who are a little skeptical, like, what is your strategy? How do you bring AI to even solve some of these problems into like a coaching regimen?
Yeah. So the underpinning mindsets of adoption of AI and attitude to AI are actually not at all related to AI. They're optimism, which is a fosterable trait, not a personality trait. It's actually a fosterable skill, and their agency. Think of that as your ability to impact the environment around you. Also, by the way, interestingly, lack of agency is one of the biggest drivers of organizational burnout. And so a lot of our job to do as senior leaders, both for the well-being of our people, and this is where it connects, and for the adoption of AI, is to help guide and coach people to be more optimistic about new experiences, to build the skills to do that, and to have higher senses of self-efficacy or agency in the workplace. There's decades of science, and there's a lot of techniques and interventions to do this. We do it on our platform with our large partners, but these are very trainable, coachable skills. But importantly, these are not job skills in the traditional sense. So to get people to use Gen AI, it's not actually, you do need to teach them to use Gen AI, by the way, but more importantly, you have to shift their mindset, which has this extra benefit of actually reducing the risk of burnout and stress and anxiety in the workplace.
Is there a super clever way to do this by using AI to make people more optimistic about AI?
Exactly.
That's where this gets that from a process standpoint.
Yeah, that's where this gets real meta, no pun intended. So AI is actually a great coach. It needs to be trained. It needs to have some guardrails. But people interacting with AI can be really helpful. There's two conditions you want when you introduce AI in the first place. Left to their own devices, workers will use AI we see in the data set in a copy and paste way. So they're not really unlocking the deeper functions. Healthcare workers in particular, compared to the rest of the population, are more likely to use AI for administrative tasks and more hesitant to use AI to make judgment or critical thinking decisions compared to the average knowledge worker. That may be a good thing for us right now as a society. But the two things that are important to get people out of the copy and paste behavior to actually unlock productivity gains are, one, it's so simple. You as an organization to tell people that they're not cheating at their jobs if they actually use AI. It sounds so basic, but the majority of your people still think that they're like cheating if they use Gen AI to do a significant part of their job. And the second thing is to actually guide them through role modeling into what are creative, productive use cases of AI. And when organizations don't do this, one, they get copy and paste behaviors, and two, actually attitudes about AI just map right on top of grievances and attitudes about engaging, meaning your most unhappy, least engaged employees become the most upset about AI, and your most happy, most engaged employees are the only ones who end up using AI. And you want to invert that. Well, the real promise is to help the least engaged employee become more engaged.
I mean, it almost seems too easy. Like we had Julie Sweet from Accenture on the stage yesterday talking about this, saying the way to get people to use AI is to tell them to use AI. I'm living this in our newsroom, saying like you should try to use AI. That kind of providing that permission structure to just try it is when they begin that journey.
It's the start. I think it's half the equation, to my point. You've got to do that. And Julie's right. We work very closely with Accenture. Julie's spot on. But you do need to address the underlying skill and the mindset as well. And I think that's, as a technologist, that's what is easy to overlook. I'm excited about AI. You're excited about AI, perhaps. We're like, let's just go use it. But most people need some coaching and counseling. Yeah. And AI can do that coaching, which is the really cool part.
Are there two pieces of hesitancy here? We've talked about it at an employer level, like in the head. What about at an organizational level? I mean, you're, of course, excited about AI. I'm excited about AI. But how do you get organizations to begin to take those first steps to make that permission structure for users?
Yeah, so we consult and advise with a lot of large organizations, a lot of pharma and healthcare organizations specifically. And I think there's really like, I live in Austin, Texas, so there's a Texas two-step here that needs to happen in terms of how organizations embrace AI. We're on like the first step, which is I find low-hanging fruit of productivity losses, of maybe jobs that I feel could be automated or replaced. But what I'm really doing is preserving the business workflow today I have and asking where AI can fill in the cracks. And that's a first step. Where I think we need to guide organizations to get is actually there's a second step, which is if I fundamentally redesign work around the business process and what AI can do, then I actually rethink where the human fills in the cracks. And what you find is that has radical, like no one even wants to consider the implications of that from an org design right now because I think it's so mind-boggling. But that's the key to really unlocking, I think, the creative productivity gains of AI versus just, hey, the cost savings. And like most digital transformations, this will happen in two steps. You'll have a bunch of companies do the first, but I think the real winners are going to say, actually take a job like a nurse. I can give them an AI tool, that's step one. What does a nurse do?
Right.
Fundamentally, what are the atomic units of jobs to be done? What could AI do equally as well? What's left for the human that they uniquely do? And this is important. We work with a large healthcare system that's spending a couple $2 billion to expand new hospital wings. And they already know there's 50,000 to 100 new beds they're building that they have no idea how to staff. Not enough nurses. You all know this. Not enough nurses.
Yeah.
You can't just fill AI in that crack. That is a chasm. You really are going to have to rethink the job of nursing fundamentally. And there's very few C-suites I find that are thinking of that second step in the Texas two-step.
Well, let's talk about the first step in the gains already. Like so much of the AI conversation I find is theoretical. It's like, well, one day it'll happen. This isn't theoretical for you. This is stuff deployed. So like get down to like what are the gains that companies can see when they deploy this correctly?
Yeah, so I think, let me talk about some of the behavioral gains because I think they underpin most performance. The number one thing when we go in and find is like impending most organizational performance is a lack of skill related to difficult conversations.
Yeah, okay.
Like you boil down most of your workplace problems. At their core, you have a nice problem, you have a conflict avoidance problem, like however you want to describe it. Like at its core, it's people don't want to have tough conversations about tough things. And the number one use case we find of our AI coaching agents is role-playing difficult conversations. And people get 20% better in a matter of hours of role-playing over a matter of days or weeks, these difficult conversations. The reality is work is the only domain of elite performance where practice is not acceptable. Navy SEALs, mission to practice time, crazy. Tom Brady, Messi, these guys practice way more than they play. You see like 2% of their life. You can't even practice a difficult conversation, usually unless you go find another human body to go practice with and you take their time. This is, I think, one of the most powerful unlocks for coaching and for workplace performance is you can role play and practice these high stakes conversations in a very low stake place.
If you practice that, that's when the gains, like the outcomes.
Yeah, you have that breakthrough. You make that move and that talent. You unlock that potential.
Yeah.
There's a ton of like worker individual productivity gains, but like we all know about that. I think these system level gains are the real.
It's great to
unsung
talk about
hero.
AI, things that are happening real right now. That's awesome. We're about to get the hook here. We're going to wrap up on Axios newsletters. We do one fun thing at Davos. It's one Davos thing. This isn't your first rodeo.
Nope.
What are your takeaways from this week? What are your life hacks for getting through it all?
Don't do too many breakfasts.
Yes.
Yes. I mean, if you've been to Davos, and never go to a nightcap. Like those are my, because they just set you up for that breakfast.
Get
being
the
too
sweet
tired.
part in the
Yeah,
middle.
get
That's
the
brilliant.
sweet part
We're
in
on
the
the
middle.
home stretch here. Lexi, thank you so
Thank
much.
you, man.
Thanks
Appreciate
for
it.
Lightspeed for making this entire week possible. Thank you for being here. Stick around. We have coffee and conversations afterwards.
Thanks, everyone.